So today we're going to talk about how you can use your PPP funds and how we can get it forgiven. What we're going to be covering is what we need to know about the PPP loan forgiveness, basically the rules that we know as of today. And then we're also going to discuss what you do not know can hurt you. So there are still a lot of things we do not know about the PPP loan forgiveness and how it will work. And every single day there are changes that are happening, and it seems like they're even changing how the game is being played. So, and up until this morning, they're still making changes. So what you do not know can hurt you. And then what things to look at as you decide on how to spend the PPP funds, and what I should be doing right now. And then we'll have some Q&As, but I have a feeling that I'll cover a lot of your questions, but you're more than welcome to ask questions as we move forward. And then, so with that, here's what we know about the loan forgiveness. So the PPP loan can basically be spent during the 8 weeks following the funding as follows. So the forgiveness window is during the 8 weeks, starting from the day you got funded. So, and 8 weeks is not the same as 2 months. So just be vigilant of that. If you get funded today on April 30th, it doesn't mean you have until June 30th to start. It's 8 weeks after today, if you were funded today. So the 8 week window starts from the date that you get funded, and you could spend the money at least 75% on payroll and the remainder on rent, interest, and utility. So that basically is the first part of the calculation, what you could spend it for. So this is the potentially forgivable amount, would be the amount that you spend during the 8 weeks, at least 75% on payroll and the remainder on rent, interest, and utilities. Now, can you spend more than 75% on payroll? You bet you can, but the minimum is 75%. Okay, but then what we know is that in the language of the CARES Act, there are going to be reductions to the potential amount that can be forgiven. Okay, so the monies that you spend during the 8 weeks will be subject to reduction in the amount of forgiveness if the employer, which in case is most of you, do reduce your full-time equivalents or reduce the salaries of the people that you bring back during the 8 weeks, during the 8 week period. So, so if you have headcount reductions, or if you reduce the salaries of employees during the 8 weeks, the amount that's going to be forgivable will be subject to reductions. Okay? Now, there is an out. So the CARES Act allows businesses to remedy any reductions in the forgiveness amount if they bring back everybody and give them back their regular salaries by June 30th. The problem is it's not really clear how it's going to be applied. For most of the people that so far have been approved and their loans have been funded, their 8 week period will probably end before June 30th. So they're probably going to be looking at your headcounts as of June 30th. The dilemma that most of us have is that, we don't really need everybody probably by June 30th unless, things change drastically. But at this point, we don't know how practical it is to have everyone back by June 30th. So the assumption that most of the money that you're going to spend during the 8 weeks will be forgiven may not be very practical if you don't bring everyone back by June 30th, because why are you going to bring them back if you're not back in business at 100%? And the SBA said weeks ago they were going to issue guidance to clarify loan forgiveness, but as of today, we don't have any information on further guidance on the loan forgiveness. So the next part is what you do not know can hurt you. And there are a lot of things we do not know. Here's an example, and it's by no way an inclusive list of what we don't know. For example, forgivable expenses. Is that the amount that you will actually pay or the amount that was incurred and paid? For example, some of you got the rent to be forgiven during April. So does that mean if you pay 3 months worth of rent during the 8 weeks, is it going to be forgiven? Well, we don't know. Is it going to be based on what's incurred and paid or what's just strictly paid? So we still have to get guidance on that. We don't know. Okay. The other thing that we don't know is, can you give bonuses or pay increases out of the PPP loans? I remember when I got my PPP loan fund, I asked that specific question to my lender, and they basically, they warned me and they said, do not basically use it in any way different what you would normally use the funds. So, don't alter your pay structure just for the PPP loan purposes, because the SBA and your lender has access from when you applied for the loan, has access to the payroll records, right? When you applied for the loan, you gave them your pay history for all the employees. So they have access to that, and they will probably compare what you paid during the 8 weeks to what was done prior to COVID-19. So we don't have an answer for that one. We also don't know what's the definition of full-time equivalent. So you know how we said your forgiveness amount is going to be limited based on your FTE counts and how, the head counts. We don't know what the definition of full-time equivalence is. So that's another thing we need to be careful about. And then, in order for employers to meet the June 30th deadline exemption, right, if they restore their full-time equivalents by June 30th, then the reduction doesn't count. Well, we don't know if all your employees will want to come back or able to come back by that date, because as you're going to encounter, some of your team members are probably going to be worried about coming back to work. And again, that's assuming you could absorb all these employees and you have work for them by June 30th. Also, a lot of us were counting on California going to start easing the restrictions earlier in May, and it doesn't look like it's going to be done. In fact, in the Bay Area, the restrictions have been extended till the end of May. So, you have all these other factors that are affecting the use of the PPP funds. So again, what you do not know can hurt you. So here's another fact. The feedback I'm getting from some lenders, including my own bank, is that they don't have the guidance or even the documentation on how the loan forgiveness will work. And keep in mind, for some of the loans that were funded 2 or 3 weeks ago, that's coming up in about 5 or 6 weeks. So the lenders, which are going to be processing the loan forgiveness, do not know how the forgiveness will work. and they don't even have the proper forms to process these yet. Okay. Um, Here's another thing we found out this week is that the government is going to be publishing a list of the businesses which will be receiving the PPP funds. They will publish a list of their tax ID numbers. So this list is going to be available to your patients, your customers, your employees. That list is going to be available in the public, to the public. Some journalists are going to probably be looking at that list, and they're going to basically be judging businesses that will be receiving the funds in the same way that Harvard was judged, the same way the Lakers were judged, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, was judged. So, this is it just keeps getting better every day with all these new things that they're saying. And again, the SBA is giving guidance and changing the rules every single day. And in the next slide, I'll show you an example. And I think we already covered that part about the employees coming back by June 30th. So, here's a snapshot that of what the Treasury website looks like for the guidelines on the PPP. Look at that. The frequently asked questions, these were updated up until yesterday. So up until yesterday, they're adding frequently asked questions. And look at that. They're issuing new interim and final rules, not just on a weekly basis, but in some cases on a daily basis. Like we've had some interim final rules issued yesterday with regards to seasonal employers, with regards to how disbursements can be made by lenders to borrowers. Today they issued guidance on corporate groups and non-bank and non-insured depository institution lenders. So they're coming up with new rules every day. But again, as you could see from this list, there are no rules on the forgiveness. So you could understand what kind of dilemma I have as your advisor on what advice I can give you on how to use the funds, let alone get it forgiven. We don't know a whole lot yet. What we know is what we know, but what we don't know is just unbelievable. So then what things to look at as you decide on how to spend the PPP funds? Here's the first advice. Basically, do not play the PPP loan forgiveness guessing game, okay? Don't make assumptions. I just do not want you to be unnecessarily spending the money and find out, assuming that it's gonna be forgiven, to find out later that it's only gonna be partially forgiven. And now you're gonna be on the hook to pay it back and over the next 2 years. So do not play the PPP loan forgiveness guessing game. Also, the only reason you guys got this far is because you got this far not because the government was helping you, okay? The government did not pay for your student loans. The government didn't help you build your business and build your practice. The government didn't help you do this. You did it because of your hard work, because of the incredible teams that you have. So don't look for the government to answer these questions or solve your problems. The government, with its loan forgiveness or whatever, that's not going to solve all the problems that we have. In fact, as we've seen in the last 6 weeks, between figuring out how the PPP works and how the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, with all the regulations that they imposed on employers, the last thing the government wants to help is you and I as business owners. In fact, if anything, they make it more difficult for us to operate. So government is not going to be the solution with this. You're going to be the solution. The fact that you have this business spirit, this entrepreneurial spirit is really what's going to help you get out of this crisis, not the government loan programs or grants, unfortunately, okay? Spend the PPP funds as if they were not going to be forgiven. So that's probably another piece of advice, given the circumstances, given that the fact we don't have enough guidance, given the fact that we don't know when business is going to reopen. We don't know what it's going to look like when you have to reopen. By our projections, we don't think it's going to be back to normal right away because of a lot of limitations. It could be because your patients and customers are worried and afraid. It could be because your team members are worried and afraid. And it could also be because you don't have proper and adequate personal protective equipment to be able to do the job safely and adequately for both your patients and your employees. So there's going to be some limitations, and we don't think we're going to be back to 100% in a while, okay? Also, you need to operate on the assumption, that the SBA is going to be auditing your loan. They already said that they're going to be auditing loans over $2 million for sure. But then, if there's going to be any whistleblowers or any, keep in mind, again, your loan information is public. The public is going to know that you got this money. So a nosy journalist or a nosy patient or a nosy employee, so again, just make sure you have the records and keep the records, assuming the SBA will audit your loan. So what should I be doing right now? Know your numbers, know your overhead, and know your cash burn rate. In the last weeks, we've developed some projection tools that we're going to be using with our clients in the coming days and weeks. So we're going to have these answers for our clients to be able to make better decisions. Because what you may end up finding out is that the greatest part about the PPP loan is maybe not the forgiveness part as much as that you have a lifeline to use as you rebuild your business, okay? So maybe that might be one positive aspect, is that if you don't spend all the PPP loan funds, you might need it to help your business come back. And only the cash flow projections will be able to determine that, and knowing what your cash burn rate is. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right professionals to guide you. And I'm not saying this, in a self-serving way, but you definitely need to do that. Also, stay in communication constantly with your team and your patients, and let them know what you're doing to protect them as they come back to your office. What can you do to make your work environment safer for you, your team, and your patients? You need to be asking yourself that question. And come up with a plan on how your business and your practice is going to come back, assuming that COVID will be around for a while, okay? Because, even in the Bay Area counties, they said that they're going to extend the shutdown until the end of May. Well, I know it's going to be very naive to think that we're not going to have COVID issues and COVID infections and people dying from COVID by the end of May. So this is going to be an ongoing problem. And so operate assuming that COVID is going to be around. And that's how you should be planning basically on using these PPP funds. Move forward, okay? Figure out how you could minimize the risk for your patients and your staff and for yourself in getting your business reopened. Ignore the chatter and ignore the negative news, okay? You're just gonna have to minimize your risks and figure out what's the best way going forward. I don't think, even by staying home, we all can just avoid risks altogether. We're even hearing about people getting sick by, getting packages in the mail. And so, just eliminating risk is probably impossible, but we all can minimize risk, and we all can, um, figure out and develop our own plans. There's no right answer for everybody, and each one individually will have to come up with the best answers that suits them, suits their team, and suits their patients. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the loan forgiveness. There are a few things that we know. There's a whole lot that we don't know. With that, I'm going to be open to your questions. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to contact me at the contact information I'm sharing with you if you have any questions. Have a great day.